Good evening and welcome to the Puyallup School District's virtual informational session on our electronic device policy updates. We're so glad you could join us tonight. My name is Sarah Gillispie. I oversee district communications and public engagement for the Puyallup School District. Over the next half hour, you will hear about the important work of our electronic device task force, the results of recent staff, family, and student surveys, and the pilot that Ballou Junior High launched just last year to test an away for the day model. We'll also be joined by Principal Lisa Cushy, who will share what her team learned from that experience and how those insights are shaping the district's next steps. We know this topic matters deeply to our community, balancing learning, connection, and well-being, and we appreciate you taking the time to be part of this conversation. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues who have been leading this process. Online, we have Julie Hunter, Executive Director of Secondary Schools, Rebecca Williams, Executive Director of Elementary Schools, and Lisa Cushy, Principal at Ballou Junior High. Together, we'll walk through what's been learned so far, what's still in progress, and how you can stay engaged as this work moves forward.
Thank you, Sarah. Here's what we'll cover tonight. We'll start with an overview of why this work is happening and how the task force came together. Then we'll share information on the current task force, their review of current policy, and work to date. After that, we'll hear about the pilot program that was conducted at Ballou Junior High last school year. We'll hear about key insights from our recent staff's family and student surveys, followed by a panel discussion at the end of the presentation where we'll respond to your questions.
Thank you, Julie. As we want this to be an interactive session, please submit your question at any time in the private chat. If a question comes to your mind during the presentation, you don't have to wait. Just send it to the moderators using that private chat function. We'll address as many questions as possible during the panel discussion at the end of the presentation. And if we don't get to yours, please remember to include your email address so we can follow up afterwards. And as always, we ask that everyone engage respectfully. We're all here because we deeply care about our students. So let's stay curious, assume positive intent, and focus on learning together.
Thank you, Sarah. Our district's strategic plan centers on preparing and empowering every student to reach their full potential. That includes ensuring learning environments are safe, supportive, and free from unnecessary distractions. This work on electronic devices is one way we're making sure every student can fully engage, not just academically, but socially and emotionally too.
Thank you, Rebecca. So why is this work necessary? Last summer, OSPI released guidance encouraging school districts to adopt or update policies limiting smart device use during school hours, particularly instructional time. Since then, 75% of Washington state districts have put such policies in place, with over 60% reporting positive results. This trend reflects growing concerns about student learning, mental health, and the increasing accessibility of smart devices. Here in Puyallup, we are carefully reviewing our practices around electronic devices. Our electronic device task force is focused on ensuring policy 3245 is clear, consistent, and effective. Key areas of discussion include defining what constitutes an electronic device, ensuring fair and consistent enforcement, and engaging students, families, and staff in the process. This work is essential to support both a safe and productive learning environment for our students. The Electronic Device Task Force is a district-wide advisory group formed to examine how devices are used in Puyallup schools and recommend updates to Policy 3245. The group includes teachers, students, families, administrators, and district staff. Their mission is simple: to ensure our policies are balanced, research-informed, and reflective of our community's values. This isn't a top-down change. It is a collaborative process guided by transparency and shared responsibility.
Policy 3245, Students and Electronic Devices, was last revised in 2017. Since then, technology has evolved dramatically. The use of smartphones, smartwatches, and other devices has expanded, and we now have far more data about their effects on learning and well-being. Our goal is to bring this policy up to date, aligning with best practices and with what we've learned from districts across Washington State and the nation.
In this process, we've looked closely at model policies from other districts both in Washington and nationally. For example, Kansas City's and LA Unified School District's Away for the Day framework. By studying what's worked elsewhere, we can design an approach that fits Puyallup's unique community and values. As we reviewed national examples and community feedback, we've also had the opportunity to learn from one of our schools right here in Puyallup. Last year, Ballou Junior High launched a pilot program to explore what an away for the day model could look like in practice. The goal was to see how limiting phone use during the school day might impact student focus, engagement, and social interaction. We are very fortunate tonight to have Principal Lisa Cushy with us, who helped lead that pilot alongside her staff and students. Lisa will share what they observed, what worked well, and what lessons her team is bringing forward as we consider an updated district-wide policy.
Thank you, Julie. At Ballou, we implemented the Away for the Day model beginning last fall, and the results have been incredibly informative. I'm excited to share a few of the things we learned with our audience tonight. Well, at Ballou, the staff looked closely at our data from 2022 through 2024, including discipline records, student surveys, and counselor observations. What they saw was concerning. Smartphone use was starting to have a real negative impact on students' well-being and learning. So together, the staff committed to making a change. Their goals were to reverse the rising rates of anxiety and depression linked to social media, increase engagement during every class period, and create a school environment where students could focus, connect, and just enjoy being at school. To address the challenges they saw, the Ballou staff implemented a phones away for the day approach. This led to a range of positive outcomes. By limiting the phone access during the school day, staff anticipated students would be more engaged in their learning, that they would perform better academically and feel safer on campus. They also expected a reduction in conflicts fueled by social media, stronger connections between students, and less drama during the school day, and an overall healthier Ballou. During the pilot, our staff established clear guiding principles for device use. The policy is straightforward. Cell phones and earbuds must stay stored in backpacks from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., with no use in classrooms, hallways, restrooms, or lunchrooms. Phones can only be used or accessed with staff support during emergencies, and all other communication during the school day should go through the office or staff. This approach wasn't so much about our rules, it was aligned with our Ballou's pride principles of persistence, respect for others, integrity, determination to stay focused on their schoolwork, and empathy for others. And it matters. Keeping these devices put away has helped us focus on learning. It's fostered face-to-face connections. It promotes safety and responsibility, supported emotional well-being by reducing anxiety and social pressure, and it has ultimately created a more positive learning culture at Ballou. By setting these expectations, Ballou staff aim to help all students thrive both academically and socially. The data tells a really compelling story. When we started this pilot, cyberbullying incidents at Ballou were high, and they have dropped dramatically. From 79 reports in 2022 to 64 in 2023 and just 4 cases of cyberbullying in 24-25. Simultaneously, the staff observed that certain periods, like fifth period, which is right after lunch, used to be a constant source of stress and distraction for students. Instead, they're getting on task right away. Unrestricted device use contributed to conflicts and negative behaviors, including social media hate pages, unconsented photos, academic dishonesty, recording of violence and maybe planned fights, and even coordination of drug distribution or unsupervised breaks. So by addressing the device use, Blue has been able to reduce all of those incidents, creating a safer, more focused environment for students with increased academic achievement. Blue's experience shows that intentional approaches to device use can make a real difference in the day-to-day student engagement, safety, and well-being. Importantly, families have been very supportive of our practice at Blue, embracing the change and even reinforcing limited cell phone use at home for our junior high students. Families' positive responses have been a critical part of our success. So next, we'll broaden our view to look at district-wide feedback from our families, state, staff, and students, helping us to understand how these practices would resonate across all schools in our district.
Thank you, Lisa. As we move forward, it is important to pause and reflect on what we've heard already from our community. Over the past several weeks, we've gathered feedback from families, staff, and students through surveys designed to understand their perspectives on electronic device use in our schools. The response has been tremendous, and we're grateful to everyone who took the time to share their experiences and ideas. Starting with families, most parents and guardians told us that they strongly support limiting device use during the school day, as long as there's a clear, reliable way to reach students in an emergency. Families emphasize the importance of consistency across schools, strong teacher-parent communication, and clear expectations for students. From staff, we heard a wide range of emotions and opinions, often with strong feelings on both sides. Many teachers shared that reducing device use has led to improved focus and social interaction in the classroom, while others emphasized the need for administrative support and consistent enforcement. What united nearly everyone, though, was the belief that clear expectations and district-wide alignment are key to success. And from students, their feedback was a little surprising. Most students said that they understand and they even agree with reasonable restrictions. They just want to be part of the conversation. They care about being able to contact families in emergencies, and they want a sense of trust and flexibility built into whatever policy we adopt. Many also mentioned mental health, school spirit, and the value of in-person connection. We'll now open our moderated panel discussion, focusing on the most common themes from your submitted questions, including how consistency will be ensured, how emergencies will be handled, and what training and support staff will receive. So throughout the presentation, we've compiled a list of questions, and we can address them in the order in which we've received. We just have a few attendees tonight, and we have not received very many questions in the chat. So please submit any and all questions in that chat. Again, it just goes to us as panel moderators, so we can engage in some thoughtful dialogue. So. We do have some common themes that have resonated, and I did want to start off with a safety question in particular. And Lisa, I'm going to lob this initial question over to you with regards to students accessing their phone in an emergency. So this question is, will my student have access to their phone in an emergency? Could you speak to how Blue handled that during the pilot?
Definitely. Great question, because safety is paramount for all of us. We know that families want to hear from their kiddos during emergencies. Students always have access to their phones. They're put away in their backpacks. So in an emergency, they will have access to their phone. And we also have great access at our building. We found that many, with our away for the day, sometimes students don't have their phones as much on them as before. So we now have 2 dedicated student phones in the front office. So we have accommodated for that. Again, away for the day doesn't mean you leave your phone at home. You can choose to do that. So you can have your phone on you for emergencies.
And Lisa, how overall did your families react to that initially, knowing that their child's phone wasn't necessarily on their person, but they did have access to it for an emergency?
Yeah, I think that in some cases, it's, well, clearly it's a sense of relief that we are showing empathy to all of our families. So even when a student has a personal crisis of the day, their child is going to have access to phones. And so it really was a sense of peace of mind to our families to know if we are in an emergency situation, that their students will have access to their parents. So it just relieved them that they're not going to be cut off from their kids in emergencies.
Good. Okay, thank you. This next question, Rebecca, I'm going to lob this one to you. We've seen this a few times with regards to students who have certain medical conditions, and Lisa spoke to students not having immediate access to their phone during a typical school day. But what happens for students that have a medical condition that requires them to use their phone? How is the task force working through that? How would this policy support an arrangement like that?
Mm. That's a great wondering. We have a lot of advances in the medical field in how we use electronic devices to monitor the rhythms of the human body, and we do see those more and more in schools. We would work in partnership with our health agencies, in partnership with the principals and the teachers, students, and families, to design a plan that is unique and provides accommodations for that child and in that need. And of course, it would have some guidelines and some boundaries and some expectations for how that electronic device is used. It's a tool to monitor health, not a tool to create a two-way communication, which is what this policy is actually addressing. The two-way communication with the engagement of social media or a website or things like that.
Okay, that's helpful. That distinction, knowing that, accommodations can be made in certain cases. Another theme that we're hearing a lot about is, cell phones versus other electronic devices versus smartwatches. What is currently being planned for with regards to smartwatches in particular? And Julie, I think I'm going to ask you to take a first stab at addressing this question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the committee is really been talking about what do we mean by a device, and I'm going to piggyback, I think, on what Rebecca just said around two-way communication devices. So smartwatches, Bluetooth headphones, smartphones are all fall under that category. So we're working on developing a way to make it appropriate that those possibly are still accessible, but they're away in backpacks or in some other methods. So we're still developing those plans as we continue to refine the policy.
And does that also apply to Bluetooth and headphones?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So one particular question is with regards to enforcement. What does the discipline look like? What do the consequences look like for students breaking the rules? I'm going to ask for Lisa to address this first, speaking from the pilot that was conducted at Blue, how Blue positively approached that. And then, certainly Julie or Rebecca, feel free to add additional comments.
Well, with our pilot, I would say it took a lot of reaching out to families and pre-teaching our kids to let them know it was coming, right? Over the summer and the previous spring leading up to that. And then pushing out lessons and telling kids, frankly, the why behind the brain science and the mental health, why this was a good thing for both them socially, emotionally, and academically. The question then became, what when kids violate, because junior high kids will test the rules. And so we have a progressive system in which we have a verbal warning. We log those, we work with families. Again, the whole goal is to keep that away, especially from instructional time and all day at Balloon. So progressive, starting with verbal, and there would be progressive consequences. In the rare case, in fact, in the year and a half that we've now had this, we have had families who say, they just have their kids leave their phone at home, or we have to make a cell phone personal contract with the kid and they drop their phone off in the morning and we keep that and they pick it up in the afternoon. So it is progressive. It always starts with education and talking to the student, involving the family, and then some minor progressive discipline.
Okay, thank you. Julie, Rebecca, did you have anything to add to that? Okay. So speaking of Bluetooth and headphones, we did just receive a question in the chat regarding Bluetooth and headphones. I have many students who claim they need music to cope. How do you address this? We do know that a lot of our students use those AirPods to listen to music. And I know that has been a topic of discussion at our task force. So Julie, do you want to take a first stab at the conversations that the task force has been having with regards to students that need that throughout the day?
Yeah, I can start, and then I would love for Lisa or Rebecca. Lisa's, on the ground dealing, working on this in an everyday matter. But the task force, the task force, this is really what we wrestle with, is where do we strike that balance? And how do we think about the different philosophy and needs? So again, with those Bluetooth, our approach is two-way communication. Any device that can be used for two-way communication, we're looking at as that falls under this definition of a way for the day, but we certainly understand that there might be some accommodations or needs that need to be addressed for specific students, and we would want to work with the family and with our staff to work through that. But Lisa, I would love to hear if you encountered that or have anything to add to that.
You bet. We had about 3, if I recall, to have to look at the data of families who said that this was a strategy to help their student focus. We don't believe that is supported based on the data and the research. Again, all of our work were founded in 2 resource documents, Anxious Generation by Height, and then also The Way for the Day in Teen and Screenagers. And in there, we want to be research-based, right? And we noticed that students who claim they need to have music on while they're writing an essay, that the data didn't support that. So we have worked with other accommodations for students. We definitely have about 6 students who use headphones which are sound sensory devices, but they're not playing music. They're using them to soften the room, all that background noise. It can be in rooms and it can be distractive. That has not been our experience, in that we've all agreed that we want them focusing on the learning.
Okay, good. So basically, accommodations exist. so that we can tailor individual student needs. So, okay, good. Um, so a couple questions coming in about teacher and staff. Can a teacher use a phone for instructional purposes, and what would that look like? Um, Rebecca, do you want to kind of comment on some of the discussions that the task force has been having around this?
Yeah, sure. This is another area that we wrestled with because not all things are fair and not all things are equal, right? And the purpose by which our teachers would be using their phones are very different than perhaps than the purposes of why our students would be using their phones. What we would expect, though, is during instructional time that phones would be put away and instruction and teaching and learning would be the focus area. There are plenty of other devices that can be used during instructional time that allow for the same goals to be met. And teachers also have some contract language around what they can do on their planning time and their personal time and their lunch time, right? So it's definitely something that we've wrestled with. Does everything stay the same for everyone, or is the rules for an adult in a teaching space different than the rules for the students in a teaching space? What we came to an agreement on is the instructional time is the instructional time, and teaching and learning is the focus.
Okay, good.
And Sarah,
Art,
can I piggyback on that one?
yeah, please do.
From our experience, the fact that not all of our students even had a smartphone has really been a great equalizer, that now when we're playing or asking kids to do a Kahoot or something that previously we would say, okay, take your phones out and do this, kids. Now we use the tool we give kids, and that is their district laptop. So we're going to do a Kahoot. We're going to do it using their district laptop. And I love the fact that that has become a great equalizer with the kiddos.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, we do, it looks like we did have one student question that came through the chat. So, but everything else has seemed to kind of die down. So just a reminder to put some more questions into that chat here. So this question is, I'm good with this, but I don't understand why I can't still use my phone during passing period. So I think the task force has been talking about, what a policy that may work for junior high schools may not necessarily work for high schools, and how we're kind of uh, moving through that and moving through those discussions. Julie, you're shaking your head, so I'm wondering if you want to be the first at kind of addressing what that may or may not look like. I'm assuming here at the high school level.
Yeah, I think the task force definitely, and those examples we showed of the districts and the both in Washington and outside of Washington, there are several examples of districts that have grade level guidance, which is very specific to K-5 or K-6, junior high or middle school, and then high school. And the panel had a lot of discussion, or our task force had a lot of discussion around we may need to differentiate based on developmental appropriateness, where students are at their age, their maturity, their reasoning. And so those are things that we are definitely considering. I could also read this as we did part of our work with the task force was to hear from Baloo students directly. And that was super fun and insightful. And I heard from students, they appreciate the expectation, they appreciate the away for the day. But even some of them said, I wish I could, right? But there's been such clear expectations. And we heard from staff saying, you know, we could do that, but there's still a distraction. They come into class distracted. There's again, are we preserving that instructional time? So I think it's kind of twofold. At the high school level, we're definitely recognizing, do we need to have a variance in our guidance? for our schools because of the grade levels and the age of the students. And then number two, with the students saying, "Oh, can I just use it for 5 minutes while I'm walking to class?" And what we have heard really loud and clear is no, no, because it still could be that 5 minutes could still take us off track from teaching and learning.
Yeah. And oddly enough, we just received a comment in the chat, kind of providing a lens from a staff member. And this is I just kind of will read it verbatim here. This comment says, as a junior high teacher who is in the hall at passing, I can say there are numerous issues when kids are staring down at phones. They aren't following the flow of traffic. They often don't hear people near them, a guest asking for directions, a student saying hi, generally not being aware of surroundings. Additionally, kids are most often marked tardy when they have been on a phone at passing. So this is a really interesting comment because this shows that, on some level, staff are supportive of a policy that really dictates how and when students engage with their phones. So we are nearing the end. It looks like we did have one more comment in the chat I wanted to read. This individual is asking for us to post resources that Blue used to guide their pilot program. Absolutely, I think that's a reasonable request. We have a district webpage dedicated to this work, which I will show here on the next slide. But we can most definitely, I mean, if Lisa's okay with that, link to some research and articles that Blue used in guiding their pilot. But before I advance and before I end the panel discussion, just want to make sure from our panelists there's nothing else that we forgot to cover or that you wanted to add to the conversation. You guys shake your head. We're good to advance. Okay. All right. Okay, here I'm gonna navigate to this final slide. So at this time, there are no questions, no more questions for us to address. So we're going to move on and conclude our event for tonight. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us and for engaging in this important conversation. Here's how you can remain involved. Participate in our online survey if you haven't already. It's posted on the district website through that QR code, actually. Stay informed through district news and social media updates, and look for the school board report in January 2026. That's when we'll present the next round of recommendations to the school board. Together, we're shaping a policy that reflects our shared values and supports our students' learning and well-being. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for being part of this discussion. Good night.